Welcome back to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by the Hockey Podcast Network, as well as DraftKings. Make sure you use promo code THPN at the DraftKings Sportsbook app for great odds and even better opportunities, especially with Super Bowl 56 in less than a week. Again, promo code THPN for great odds and opportunities at sign up for the DraftKings Sportsbook app. So, Horwat, it's time for our weekly Pens poll. This one we got a lot of comments on, a lot of discussion on, and I thank everybody on Twitter for chipping in, chiming in, giving your 2 cents. We love it. I have a lot of the comments written down here that I will talk about. But our poll this week was, which Penguins player should be shopped at the NHL trade deadline? Not necessarily traded, but should be a guy that Ron Hextall is saying, hey, this guy's available and we're willing to deal. Which of these players would you choose? Jason Zucker got over 50% of the vote, 51%. And I think both of us disagree with that. So we'll get into that in a minute. But Jason Zucker, far and away, the clear winner of this poll, if you want to call it a winner. 51% of the vote. Kasperi Kapanen, a name that we would have never thought to be in this conversation at the beginning of the season, gets 36% of the vote. So it really was a two-horse race. Casey DeSmith, I think people are already just like, what are we going to get back for kind of a washed backup goalie in Casey DeSmith? He gets 9% of the vote. Still a couple people want to get rid of him. And other got 4% of the vote. I'll read a couple of the comments here, and then we'll get into our opinions. Braden said, honestly, all of them. Love that. It might have been in the other vote. Honestly, all of them. And being honest, I like it. AP Spicy says, Zucker, DeSmith, and Dominic Simone. I don't know what you're getting for Dominic Simone. Again, we talked last week. I think in his role, he's been fine this year. I mean, he hasn't scored goals, but do we expect him to?
No.
Do we really expect him to? And I feel like that's unrealistic expectations, expecting Dom Simone to score more than 5 goals this season, to be completely honest. So, but AP Spicy says Zucker, DeSmith, and Simone. I don't know what you're getting. If you package those guys together, you might get a second-round pick. You might get a second-round pick. And then True North Pens fan also said, I think Zucker will be clutch down the stretch. People are underestimating his full game. So you and True North Pens fan are just like this on the Jason Zucker belief. So that is what our listeners and our followers have thought. Horwat, what do you think of this Pens poll, and what did you vote for?
So I voted for other because I also commented that all of them is the only correct answer. I do believe that Zucker's going to be the new piece to this team going down the stretch. But at the same time, I understand that this is a business, and that if anybody's going to be traded, Zucker's a good piece because everyone in the league knows he has skill. Everyone in the league knows he can do something. He's making a lot of money for a reason. I mean, hell, the Wild locked him up to a clause that really, you can't trade him anywhere. I'm trying to remember the name of it now. Modified no trade. So when you have that on your contract, more often than not, there's a reason. Because the team doesn't want to lose you. So I don't mind the Zucker answer, and I don't mind him winning this because you can get a lot in return for him. Not a lot as in a first liner, but you can get a good draft pick, maybe a prospect, and maybe a usable piece. Kapanen, we just don't want to see anymore. I think there's a reason for that. Kapanen, we're just done with. And so, same with DeSmith, but DeSmith we have to hold on to because we don't know what the Domingue situation is, and really, what are our other backup goalie options? Are we trading backups with somebody? Are we just swapping backup Gs? Because that's not a trade that happens very often.
No.
More often than not, you're just gonna ride your backup as much as you can and tell them, try your hardest, bud. Figure it out in the off season. So, whereas I wouldn't mind seeing all 3 of them get moved, we're not moving all 3 of them.
No, that's way too much turnover.
Yeah, you don't want to mess with the chemistry and the turnover that much. Unless you're packaging, like all 3 of these in a package would be insane. But again, what are you getting back for that? Because the trading nowadays is hard and it's unpredictable. So while I do like the Zucker leading this poll, it's just a matter of I think he could still do something, but you get a lot of return out of him. I get why that was the winner here. Kasperi Kapanen's interesting just because, I mean, the dude's done nothing. The dude has done nothing, and we'll take a bag of pucks for him.
Yeah.
But again, it's a lot of money, and he's an RFA. Best of
That's
luck
true.
to anybody who takes him.
Yeah, that's a
And
rental
to Smith,
situation.
and to Smith, I've gone over. So it's a hard question. Whereas I like the answer of all of them. We just know that's not going to happen. But also, Jason Zucker being at the top of the list makes a lot of sense to me.
When we talk about who's going to be in conversations for trades, yeah, sure. Take all of them, throw their names out there, and whichever one gets the best return, that's the one you pull the trigger on. I mean, that's the cheap answer to this question. But when I look at it, Jason Zucker is the player that is going to help this team the most if he stays. I understand that his cap situation is the worst out of everybody on this list, but at the same exact time, you're trying to win a Stanley Cup this year. Who cares about next year right now? Focus on this year. And of the three of these guys, Jason Zucker is going to help you the most as of right now, even that he's injured. He's coming off of surgery. Kasperi Kapanen is the guy that I don't want to. I think that's recency bias. That everybody said, you know what? He's been trash all year. That's recency bias, though. If he turns it around, then he could potentially be the guy of these three that helps you the most. DeSmith, I don't think you get anything back for. So that's why I don't vote for DeSmith. But of these three guys, I'm willing to move on for Kasperi Kapanen because you're not going to sign him back in the offseason anyway. What you get back from him might be helpful. You might look for a new situation for him, and it might be a 1-for-1 with a little bit of an incentive piece on the side. Maybe you go up to Vancouver and you say, hey, if we throw in a couple sweeteners, do you give us a Connor Garland? Do you give us a JT Miller? I know that's a stretch, but maybe Jim Rutherford wants to deal with his former team. But then again, we don't know why he left. So maybe he doesn't want to deal with his former team. But I think the interesting thing when you look at these three names is all three of them, you're selling low. Like you're not selling high on any of these guys. You have to do a sell job if you're Ron Hextall. You have to say, hey, listen, Kasperi Kapanen, he's had a down season, but maybe it changed the scenery. Or you have to say, hey, Jason Zucker's been all over the place, but not quite there, and we need a little bit of cap flexibility. Otherwise, we would keep him. We love Jason Zucker. You have to do a sell job because you're selling low on all these players. The return is not going to be great because you can do as well as you want to do if you're Ron Hextall and trying to sell any of these guys. But other general managers aren't stupid. They've watched the games. They have their scouts. They know where all three of these guys are, and that's not a valuable position right now. You're trading these guys as a weakness, not as a strength to your organization. So do I think any of them get traded? Potentially Kapanen. I don't think DeSmith gets traded. You might move him out by being demoted, but I don't think you trade DeSmith and get anything realistically in return that's valuable. So if there's any of them that are gonna get traded, I think it's Kasperi Kapanen. Do I think they ask around on Jason Zucker? Yes, but the only one that I can see getting actually moved would potentially be Kapanen. But again, it feels like a stretch. It feels like giving up on him would be something that's not keen to Hextall and Burke. I know they don't have really any connection to him other than the fact that they took over the team and he was here. But I really think that if any of them are going to get traded, it's Kasperi Kapanen. It might be a recency bias, but other than that, I think it's probably him.
Yeah, and that makes total sense. For what it's worth, you mentioned Casey DeSmith and him being moved by way of minors. He would have to fly through the waivers, and you know who needs a save at all? Buffalo. Take him.
Yeah.
Take him. Let him be your starter.
Well, I mean, a lot of people are saying Buffalo might trade Craig Anderson. Would you be interested in Craig Anderson as a backup?
I wouldn't hate the idea.
As a rental? I mean, I'm pretty sure he's on a 1-year deal.
He was retired before he got to Washington, so I'm assuming he's on a 1-year deal.
True.
So, yeah, that's why I don't hate that idea, especially if he's just filling in for Domingue at the time. I like the idea of DeSmith for Anderson. Again, backup for backup isn't a trade that we see very often, if at all, especially in the middle of a season.
No. You'd be trading probably like a 3rd or 4th round pick for Craig Anderson, I would imagine, depending on where the market's at.
Yeah, and then you just – but then you send DeSmith through waivers and he gets picked up by Buffalo, and then you discuss why the hell didn't you just trade him. That being said, Buffalo needs a goalie, period.
Well, they need to have a goalie that is going to actually do something there. Not a 38-year-old goaltender that's just there till they can push the can down the road. Craig Anderson's 40. So
that too. Like I said, he was retired before he got to Washington.
But I mean, he's only played 8 games this year because he has dealt with injury. But he is back from that injury in those 8 games, which is basically the same sample size that Casey Smith has played. 262 goals allowed average and a 917 save percentage. That's an upgrade.
I hear 917. I like it.
Yeah, that's an upgrade on what DeSmith has shown this far. So I don't know what it takes. Again, there's goaltenders out there like Holtby, like Fleury, like Halak. So there is a market for goaltenders that you might be able to make it a buyer's market, but we'll see what happens with that. I wouldn't hate bringing in Craig Anderson for a low pick to just try to get Tristan Jarry some help. I think that's where the value is. Just get him some help, get him some rest, especially, he's played a lot of hockey. The teams coming up are a lot more difficult. The Penguins schedule does not get easier at the end of the season.
No. And those names you mentioned, the Fleury thing isn't going to happen. That's a ton of money.
Not to us.
And
no, somebody else. Yes.
Us. And hopefully not Washington either. Holtby, speaking of Washington, is interesting because what the hell happened to him? But also, how much is he making right now? And what is his ability actually at?
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be fun. It'd be an absolutely petty move on Holtby's part to come to the rival.
Yeah.
Because that relationship didn't end the greatest, didn't it?
I think he wanted to get paid. He just couldn't do it in Washington.
Interesting. I don't remember how that ended.
He left as a free agent. I know that, but
that's interesting. Maybe. I don't know. But Craig Anderson, I don't mind because he's cheap. We know he's only going to be a rental.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of fodder until Domingue gets figured out and DeSmith gets moved on from. Because again, Buffalo needs a save. DeSmith can give you a couple. I don't know how good he'd be.
I don't think Buffalo wants DeSmith back in that deal. I think they'll be like, we'll take the pick and we'll be fine with that. You don't need to send us Casey DeSmith. You can send him down and pay the tax to have him down in the minors.
Yeah. Oh, Halak, that was the other name you mentioned.
Yes.
I don't hate that. That might be the best option out of the ones you mentioned.
Remember, Halak is the one that Matt Wenzel said the Penguins might have their eye on.
Yeah, and because it makes the most sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, Fleury is just going to cost too much. We don't know what Holtby is anymore. Holtby could still be a starter for all we know. We don't need another starter on this team.
Yeah, Dallas is really weird with their goaltenders right now.
Yeah. And
they have 3 and had 4 coming into the season before Ben Bishop retired.
Yeah. And Halak is just in a weird middle ground of we know he has starting ability, but he just shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
So that one makes the most sense.
Yeah.
We talked about goalies for far too long in this question.
Well, this is what happens. We talk about goalies and it goes. But it was a good episode of the Tip of the Iceberg. That's where we're going to end it. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. Horwat, I mean, we're to the latter half of the season. We don't have to deal with the All-Star break anymore. What is one last thing you want to say here before we say goodbye?
Man, if you watched the All-Star game, I'm sorry. If you watched the Pro Bowl, or sorry, the youth touch football game.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. If what else am I sorry for?
The flag football game that they had on before that was way more physical.
Of course it was.
Yes.
That's it, I guess. Just enjoy some hockey. We're back, and I got nothing else.
All right. Have a good week. That's going to do it for this episode of the Tip of the Iceberg. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you guys on Thursday. Have a good week, Pens fans.